Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week, talking about some terrible teenagers from history. I remember when I was a teenager, I was an angsty little turd writing little poems and song lyrics. I was so moody, but I was so artistic and bleh, and whatever. No one understood me, and they didn't, but for different reasons. But yeah, we've all been there, just riddled with hormones, and maybe you cut yourself, and that's not great, but it's probably better in comparison to some of these four people today who did not handle their teenage years very well. We are looking at the stories of Daniel LaPlante, Brenda Spencer, Josh Phillips, and the first story after the fancy music of Charlie Brandt. Charlie Brandt was born in Connecticut on February 23rd, 1957, to German immigrants. His father's job at International Harvester, which is a agricultural and construction machinery company. They make like the giant, like harvesting tractors. I was shocked that that's in Connecticut and not in like Alabama or Mississippi or somewhere, but it's in Connecticut. But because of that job, like the family had to relocate several times. And because of that, Charlie kind of grew up really shy. He always had trouble, making new friends and adjusting into a new life in a new city every couple of years. And I get it. Psychologists would call that adjustment disorder, which sounds like a fake condition to have, but apparently it's real. Apparently, if you have adjustment disorder, you're just a big baby who can't accept change and has to make it everyone else's problem. And I say that as someone who has been diagnosed with adjustment disorder. So it still doesn't even sound like a real thing, right? It's just, oh, you have problems adjusting to that. Well, then it's an adjustment disorder. Or I don't know. That's where my deep South, very strict and no nonsense upbringing comes into play. It's like, oh, yeah, you don't have ADHD. You just need to be disciplined and sit still. Learn, oh, you don't have depression. You just need to get a better attitude, right? And so it's like, oh, adjustment disorder? Or how about you just grow up and accept it and make the best of it, right? Brains are silly. Anyway, on January 3rd, 1971, 13-year-old Charlie Brandt walked into his parents' bathroom in their Indiana home. His father was in the middle of shaving, and his mother, who was actually 8 months pregnant at the time, was taking a bath, which is, I don't know, that's weird. To me, that's weird, right? Is that not weird? You have a very pregnant woman taking a bath, and then the dad is in the same room showering. When you're taking a bath, you're not pulling the shower curtain. I don't know, man. Maybe, look, here's the thing. Maybe some of you do this with your spouses. I don't go into the bathroom when my wife is also in the bathroom, unless she's like not doing anything. Here's the thing. If she's in the shower or using the bathroom, I don't go in the bathroom. All right. I give her privacy, but I don't know. Maybe the Brandt family was different and they just let their kids walk in while they're taking a bath or something. I don't know. But, Charlie, he walks in, all right. His dad's in the middle of shaving. His mom's taking a bath. And then Charlie just shoots both of his parents at point blank range. I know that took a hard turn very fast, but what do you expect? This is what this show's about. His father actually survived the gunshot, but his mother and their unborn child died instantly. Charlie then walked down the hall to his sister's room and tried to shoot her, but for some reason that the gun would not fire. And then, realizing what was going on, Charlie's sister wrestled the gun away and calmed him down to the point where she was finally able to call police. Because he was too young to be charged with murder under Indiana law, Charlie was forced to undergo several psychiatric evaluations, but none of them could really determine why he tried to kill his entire family. So after spending a year in a mental hospital, Charlie was released back to what was left of his family, which was just his dad and his sister at this point. And then the family, what's crazy about this is like everyone in the family kept the entire incident a secret. They even somehow kept it from, he actually had some younger sisters. I said it was just his mom and his dad and his sister, but he had a couple of younger sisters, who, I don't know, like apparently had no idea that their mother had been shot to death. And maybe they were like, like under 3 or 2 or something where they couldn't have known and they didn't understand, but like the entire family just kept this a secret. Like, I don't know if they just made it seem like there was an emergency and the mother died during pregnancy or during childbirth or something, but like crazy. And so Charlie and the rest of the family ended up moving down to Florida, where he actually lived a relatively normal life. He ended up graduating college with a degree in electronics. He got a job as a radar specialist, and he even got married. By 1989, Charlie and his wife Terry were living in a beach house in the Florida Keys. So like doing really good. This kid at 13 years old murdered his mother and future sibling, tried to kill his dad, and then also tried to kill his older sister. And then now, 30 odd years later, no, 20 years later, about 30, 30 years later, he's doing really well. He's got a high paying job. He's making enough money to where he could live in a beach house in the Florida Keys, right? Florida Keys, not a big place, very limited real estate, and that real estate is very expensive. So like, dude, I don't know, man. Like if you're the type to believe in karma, this doesn't do a lot for your belief system, right? Because this was a terrible kid and he just snaps one day and now he's being rewarded. But it you know what? I take that back because it's about to turn around. In 2004, Charlie and his wife evacuated the Keys ahead of Hurricane Ivan and drove up to Orlando to stay with their niece, Mary Lou. On September 13th, Mary Lou was expecting one of her friends to come over, but then told her not to come since Charlie and Terry were drunk and fighting with each other. And then that was the last time anyone heard from Mary Lou. 2 days later, another one of Mary Lou's friends came over to check on her. And after finding the front door locked, the woman went over to the garage where she found Charlie hanging from the rafters. She called police, who then arrived and entered the house and found Terry on the couch with 7 stab wounds in her chest. They then found Mary Lou, who was decapitated and disemboweled. Probably not what you expect to see as a police officer. Police were completely baffled, as they should have been. They still had no motive for why all these people were dead. They went down back to the Keys and searched Charlie's home, where they found his monthly subscription to the Victoria's Secret catalog, as well as several books on surgery. But like, I don't know, that was weird. They also discovered that Charlie had traveled a lot for his job and decided to open up a lot of cold cases, just to see if Charlie was like this gigantic serial killer. And they looked at every unsolved murder around the country as far back as 1973 that involved women specifically getting decapitated and disemboweled. And here's what's crazy. They connected Charlie to 26 unsolved cases, but like could not find anything other than some circumstantial evidence. And so like that was kind of it. They have no idea why he snapped again. No one knows why he snapped in the first place and tried to kill his family. No one knows why he killed his wife and his niece. And no one really knows if he also murdered, almost 30 other people. So just a lot of mystery, right? Anyway, our next story here is of Brenda Spencer, who was born on April 3rd, 1962, and grew up in the San Carlos neighborhood of San Diego, California, which was directly across from Grover Cleveland Elementary School. And the thing about Brenda was that like she knew that she was gay from like the day she was born, which is crazy. I don't know how a 3-year-old knows they're gay, but whatever. And after her parents divorced, Brenda stayed with her dad in just this really impoverished neighborhood. And like, if you're like me, you think San Diego, you think, oh, it's a really nice city, a lot of wealthy people that live there, but it still has its rough parts. And the San Carlos area of San Diego, very poor, very impoverished, or at least it was at the time. I don't know if it's been gentrified yet. And for whatever reason, Brenda also hated police and often just openly talked about killing police officers and doing something big to get on television. By 1978, Brenda was at an alternative school where staff discovered that she was suicidal because, I mean, look, like life in general was pretty tough for gay people in the 1970s, even in super liberal California. And that summer, Brenda shot out the windows of Grover Cleveland Elementary School with her BB gun and was later arrested for burglary. Although she was recommended to be sent to a mental institution, her father refused and kept her home, and actually instead ended up giving her a Ruger 1022 semi-automatic rifle for Christmas and 500 rounds of ammunition, which is exactly what you give an unstable, suicidal teenager. I mean, what else was he supposed to do, right? So on the morning of January 29th, 1979, Brenda posted up in a window in her house with her rifle, which was, like I said, in view of this elementary school. And as the children arrived for school and waited on the principal to open up the gate, Brenda just began sniping them. She injured 8 children and then later a responding police officer. She also ended up killing the principal and the janitor as they tried to shield the children from the gunfire. She then spent the next several hours barricaded inside the house as negotiators tried to get her out. And eventually they did. Eventually they talked to her. And then when a reporter from the San Diego Union Tribune asked why she had shot a bunch of people, all she said was, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." So clearly mentally unhinged. She eventually surrendered and pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and assault with a deadly weapon, which seems like a really lenient charge considering the 8 children that she did end up shooting. She was given 25 years to life in prison, where she still currently sits, and she's not on parole or anything like that. Our next story here is of Daniel LaPlante, who was born in 1970 in Townsend, Massachusetts, where his life immediately started off terrible. He was abused physically, emotionally, and sexually by several family members, though most of the abuse was led by his father. He was also dyslexic and struggled both socially and academically in school. And to top it all off, he cared very little about his appearance and hygiene and was ultimately referred to a psychiatrist because of it. Like, I don't even want to know what he smelled and looked like. If you are getting referred, doesn't matter that you are suffering all of this abuse, and it doesn't matter that you have dyslexia and that you are struggling to make friends and are struggling in school, we're going to refer to you for a psychiatrist because your breath smells like dumpster juice. That's insane. So crazy. After the psychiatrist diagnosed him with hyperactivity disorder, Daniel figured his life was pretty much going to be hopeless. Like, he figured there was no way he was going to get cured, no way he was going to get better. It got even worse when that same psychiatrist looked at Daniel and his dirty, smelling, unkempt appearance, and after having just diagnosed him with a mental disorder, thought it would be great to sexually abuse him as well. Because everyone else was doing it. Why not? Why not the psychiatrist jump in on it too? Which is like, and I've said this before on the show. Like, I don't understand how people, like older people, are sexually attracted to teenagers, like teenage boys. Because teenage boys are gross. I know this because I was a teenage boy and I was gross. Like, even teenage boys who have like moderate hygiene, they still stink, because there's just so much hormonal activity going on. Maybe they got some acne on their face, their armpits stink, their balls are sweating. There's hair sprouting up everywhere. It's gross and they don't know how to deal with it. And yet people get turned on by that. And I think it's funny, not like a ha-ha kind of funny, but just a crazy kind of funny that this psychiatrist looks at this kid, sees everything wrong with him, how gross he is. He's probably got gross, nasty, yellow teeth, because he doesn't brush his teeth. His hair's all greasy and knotted and nasty. He stinks because he doesn't shower. And he thinks to himself, I gotta get some of that. That sight was making his wiener wiggle a little bit. And I don't understand how that's even possible, but it happened. And even worse, for the next year, Daniel was forced to go see this psychiatrist for the next year. And unbeknownst to his parents, be constantly sexually abused by this person. And when he wasn't getting abused by literally everybody, Daniel spent his free time committing petty thefts. And as he became more and more skilled as a burglar, he developed this desire to also like psychologically torment his victims. So on top of stealing things, Daniel would also just leave other valuable items behind and then move other items to different places in the home as a way to play mind games with the homeowners, right? So it's like one of those things where, he breaks into a house and maybe he steals one piece of jewelry, maybe he steals like some diamond rings, but then he like takes some gold earrings or something and then just like puts them in the kitchen. Like just weird stuff like that to really screw with you mentally. And it's brilliant, illegal, highly suspect, don't recommend it, but it's a brilliant move. As someone who has had his residence broken into multiple times, I get it. Like I had like 3 PS4s stolen from me in my lifetime. And each time, like the first 2 times, this is what was crazy. The first 2 times, like the people who broke in took everything, like TV, PS4, whatever valuable thing they could find, laptop, all of it. The last time though, the person broke in and just took the PlayStation, left my computer, but like unplugged my Amazon Alexa, which like has the ability to record noises and act as like a mini security system. So they were smart enough to do that and just like real psychologically deep, right? In 1986, Daniel obtained the phone number of a house that he had broken into already and began conversing with the 2 girls who lived there. Names were Annie and Jessica. And they were similar to his age. So like he probably knew them. They may, I don't know if they went to the same school. Yeah, he was 16. So they may have even gone to the same school together. While he was masking his identity, he told the girls that he was this tall, blonde, athletic boy who lived in the area and had gotten their number from someone that they both knew. And after several phone calls, Annie actually agreed to go on a date with him. So when Daniel showed up and like to go on this date, I don't know if he just forgot or he was thinking that Annie would totally forget that he had described himself as a completely different person. But Annie was shocked to see that she had been totally catfished, but she ended up like, to her credit, ended up agreeing to go to the local fair with him anyway. That's where they were going to go on a little carnival date. And during the date, Annie divulged that she and her sister had recently lost their mother to cancer. And rather than like offering some simple condolences, Daniel started asking like all of these probing questions as to like how the death made Annie feel. And like, probably sad, it's like, but how does it, like, how do you really feel? Like, do you feel safe in your house now without your mother there? Do you think that like her ghost might still be around the house? And I say those 2 very specific things, very, as some foreshadowing, in this story. And like an hour into the date, Annie was so thoroughly creeped out by everything that Daniel was asking her that she made up an excuse to leave and go home. So after breaking things off with Daniel, Annie and Jessica decided to try to contact their dead mother by performing a seance in their basement. Nothing really happened, as seances usually go, because they're not real. And so the girls went to bed. However, later that night, they heard a knock against their bedroom walls as they slept. And thinking that their seance had actually worked, the girls actually began talking out loud as if their mother's spirit was in the walls. And so over the next few nights, the knocks continued. And when the girls asked a question, they would receive knocks on the wall in return. It's a lot of things, like knock once for yes, knock two for no, stuff like that. They soon also began to notice items that were missing from the house. And then other items would be in a completely different spot in the house from one day to the next, including like super huge pieces of furniture. And that's what's crazy. Like Daniel was so good at what he did that he would break into the house and he would just move beds around. He would rearrange the furniture in entire rooms just to screw with these girls. And Annie and Jessica, not realizing that it was possible for someone to actually do that, they came to believe that they had actually summoned an angry demon in their seance instead. And so in January of 1987, Annie and Jessica were home alone when the knocking began. However, this time, instead of coming from the walls like they had been, the knocks sounded like they were coming from the basement. And so they think, oh man, the demon is in the house. The demon's in the basement. So they grabbed a knife from the kitchen and crept downstairs. And when they turned the light on, they saw a message smeared in blood along the basement wall. And I'm not making any of this up. Like, I know this sounds like the plot to like a horror thriller movie. This all happened. But they see this message smeared in blood on the wall. It said, "I'm in your room. Come and find me." No, you get out of the house at that point is what you do. You call police. And that's what happened. The girls ran out of the house and went over to their neighbor's house to call their father, Brian. And when Brian arrived home, he immediately thought that the girls had been just screwing with him for several months about their ghost mom, the evil demon inside the house. And like, he thinks they've gone insane and he's not having any of it. And so because of that, like, he thought they were struggling to cope with their mother's death. So he arranged for them to undergo psychiatric counseling. A few weeks later, the girls heard the knocking again. This time it was coming from like behind Annie's bedroom wall. And so the way the house was set up, like the bedroom wall, there was like another room on the other side of it. And so when they walked into that other room, they saw another message written in blood that said, "I'm back. Find me if you can." So again, the girls, very smart girls. They ran to the neighbor's house, called Brian, their father, who he still thought they were both crazy. And so to prove that they were crazy, he marched right inside to show them that no one else was in the house. But when he walked inside, he noticed that several items had been moved around and were in different places than what the girls had told him. And at that moment, he realized, like, oh no, someone has been in here since the girls, with the girls. And not only that, but someone had been in there and done this in the time after the girls had left the house and he had gotten back to see what was up. Brian then walked into Annie's bedroom and found another message in blood written on the wall that said, "Marry me." I don't know, man. And like, this is the point where, like, you're watching this movie, the screeching horror music is like up at its highest crescendo, and Brian slowly turns his head to look at another wall in the room, and he sees a teenage boy dressed in his dead wife's clothes and wearing her makeup and holding a hatchet. I am not making any of this up. Brian, the father of these two girls, super convinced that his girls are insane and, just PTSD, struggling with the death of their mother, marches inside. Oh no, maybe they were right. Someone was in the house. Goes into his daughter's bedroom, sees the words "marry me" written in blood on the wall, and then he turns his head to see Daniel LaPlante wearing his dead wife's clothes and her makeup, which, why hasn't he gotten rid of that stuff yet? I don't know. And holding a hatchet and like insane. And so Brian, like, fight or flight, really, he lunges at Daniel and the two wrestle each other for a brief moment, but Daniel eventually escapes. Police arrive a few minutes later and begin searching the house, and they quickly discover that the messages actually hadn't been written in blood, that it was written in ketchup, which slightly less horrifying, but good move on Daniel's part. They also found a crawl space behind a cupboard that had been built into Annie's bedroom wall, and when they opened that hatch, they found Daniel laying there inside. So after hauling him off to jail, they realized that he had actually been living in this crawl space for several weeks. He had even tunneled his way to other rooms of the house and carved several peepholes into the wall so that he could watch Annie in every room that she was in. Investigators believed that he was preparing to actually reveal himself as the girl's dead mother and potentially murder them. But instead, they caught him in time and they placed him in a juvenile facility. And like, that's where the story should end. But no. Instead, they released this guy a few months later, right? You go through all that trouble. You live in someone's crawl space for weeks. You create peepholes to spy on a teenage girl, even if you are the same age. Still weird. And you get ready to potentially murder them because holding the hatchet can be seen as intent to kill. And then you just release him a few weeks later, not months, not years, weeks. And guess what? He goes right back into breaking into homes. On December 1st, 1987, after stealing 2 pistols from a different house, 17-year-old, like he's still 17 doing all this, broke into Priscilla Gustafson's home. And I don't know if he expected them to be there or what, but after realizing that they were very aware that he was there, Daniel took Priscilla upstairs, raped her, and then shot her in the back of the head twice at point blank range. He then went and found both of Priscilla's children and drowned them in each of the home's bathtubs. Police somehow quickly connected Daniel to the murders, but when they couldn't find him hiding in the crawl space, I guess they kind of expected him to be there, they launched this massive manhunt. And meanwhile, Daniel was already in another town breaking into more homes. He abducted one woman as she sat in her car, but she escaped. And then 2 days later, police finally found him hiding in a dumpster and was given 3 life sentences for the murder of Priscilla Gustafson and her 2 kids. Crazy. So our final story here, I think it's our final story. Yes. Our final story here is of Josh Phillips, who was born on March 17th, 1984 in Allentown, Pennsylvania. His family, shortly after his birth, relocated to Jacksonville, Florida. Josh's father was an abusive alcoholic. And on one occasion, Josh actually walked into his parents' room and saw that his father had gotten his fist stuck in the wall after punching it, which that's the sort of thing that'll mess you up later on in life. On November 3rd, 1998, at 14 years old, Josh's 8-year-old neighbor, Maddie Clifton, disappeared. Another one of their neighbors was immediately arrested for the disappearance because he had actually been charged with sexual assault on 2 different occasions 15 years prior. And the Florida police, they just assumed, right, that he had done it. And although this neighbor failed a polygraph test, he provided a solid alibi and the charges were eventually dropped. Police ended up giving up on the search because Florida police are just always busy with the next awful thing that happens every 5 seconds. So after police gave up, 400 volunteers continued the search for this girl. 14-year-old Josh, determined not to end up like his father, was one of those volunteers. He wanted to be a good person and, go help find this girl. However, Josh was not convinced that this neighbor was innocent because that same neighbor had tried to abduct him at one point earlier in his childhood. And this neighbor often invited him over, but warned him to never go down into the basement, right? And Josh eventually, you can't tell a kid to not go somewhere. And also, first of all, you can't be creepy. And then you also can't tell a kid to not go do something because they're absolutely going to do it. And so Josh got curious one day and cracked open the door leading to the basement. And when he did, an alarm sounded, sending this neighbor, the homeowner, over and like freaking out. Like, I told you not to go in the basement. So the neighbor tries to tie Josh up and lock him in a closet, but Josh fought himself free and ran home. And he tried to tell his parents, like, hey, this dude is literally doing something. But because his father's just an absolute pile of trash, father didn't believe him. No charges were ever pressed and nothing ever came of it. So while Josh is out searching for Maddie, the girl who has disappeared, Josh thinks that neighbor's behind it. He goes over to that property and walks around the backyard where he found a small window that allowed light into the basement. He tried to look inside, but the window panes were so old and faded that he couldn't see inside. However, he could hear muffled screams. And at that point, Josh kicked the window open and saw Maddie with her mouth duct taped. She was handcuffed to a support beam. And as he tried to set her free, that same neighbor, the dude, busts through the basement door and starts attacking him. And they start wrestling. And Josh sees all of this just is playing out like another movie. And they're wrestling each other to the floor. Josh sees an old hammer that had fallen behind a workbench, and he kicks the neighbor off of him long enough to scramble over to the workbench, grabs the hammer, and beats the dude to death with it. And although Maddie had been rescued, he's the hero. Inexplicably, he is put on trial for manslaughter. However, in a shocking act of sensibility not often found in Florida, he was acquitted. But the story does not end there. All right. Despite their 6-year age difference, Josh and Maddie developed a close bond, a really close bond, really close. All right. And I get it. Maddie became Josh's only real source of love and affection thanks to his poor home life. They both kind of understood each other. And also Josh is a literal hero to this girl because he saved her life and God knows what else. And so Josh ended up vowing to wait for Maddie so that he would marry her one day. And true to his word, shortly after her 18th birthday in 2008, 24-year-old Josh proposed. And today, the couple lives happily ever after with their 3 kids out in the Orlando suburb of Apopka, where, ironically enough, they actually operate an escape room. And absolutely none of that's true! Holy cow! You did not think for one second that story would have a happy ending, did you? This whole episode is about terrible teenagers, and I just went way off the rails. You thought, I hope you thought, God, why don't they make a movie about this? How have I not heard this story? This is romantic. This kid saved this girl's life and then waits for her? Oh my God, I really hope. I hope all of you are really pissed off at me right now. Because if you believed it, God, that's some good storytelling, isn't it? Because, no. Instead, here's what really happened. Josh really was one of the volunteers searching for Maddie, but he never found her. Instead, Josh's mother found Maddie a week later, stuffed inside the base of Josh's waterbed. Oh man. Oh God. Oh man. Here's the thing. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wrote this so long ago that I completely forgot that I misdirected myself, because I'm reading this and here's the thing, guys. I don't do any show prep. All right. I have all of these stories written. They're in all of my books. And I know what the stories are. I grouped them together based on various things. I knew what happened in this story. I forgot about the misdirection. And I'm reading this story and I'm reading it and I'm believing it. I'm like, oh my God, did I put this in the wrong episode? I know this is an episode about terrible teenagers, but this guy's a hero. And then And then I fooled myself. So, hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better. But God, man, just wow. Anyway, Josh, the Maddie is dead underneath this kid's waterbed. And after examination, police determined that Maddie had actually been clubbed to death, or clubbed with a baseball bat and then later stabbed to death. Josh confessed to the murder, saying that Maddie had come over one day and asked him to play baseball with her. And as the two played, Josh hit like a screaming line drive, like right at Maddie's face, hitting her in the eye, causing her to bleed. And then, not wanting his father to beat him for it, Josh drags this girl inside and strangles her with a phone cord for 15 minutes until she was dead. And then he beat her with the baseball bat and stuffed her under his bed. And if that's true, like, that tells you how bad his father was, that he thought his only alternative to not getting in trouble and getting beaten by his father was to just kill this girl, and then hopefully no one would ever find out what happened. I'm still laughing about just the other way that I told this story. Oh God, this is great. Anyway, when his father returned home after he had killed this girl, Josh greeted him and tried to act like he hadn't just beaten this little kid to death. After a few awkward moments, Josh returned to his room and found that Maddie was actually still alive. And so he removed the mattress and stabbed her 11 times, which is what ultimately killed her. Josh was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Like I said, he cited the fear of his father beating the absolute hell out of him as the contributing factor. And then, I don't know, in like some kind of good karma, his father actually died in a car accident 2 years later. So, I mean, like, silver linings, I guess. While in prison, Josh attended a distance learning program and actually received his paralegal degree. Today, he actually helps fellow inmates win their appeals. In 2016, Josh's attorneys filed an appeal on his behalf to have his sentence reduced. And although the life sentence was upheld, his case is eligible for review at some point this year. So, I don't know, maybe something will come of it, but that is the end of today's stories. All right, that is it. Terrible teenagers in the books. Seriously, like, if I fooled you on that, please let me know. And please do not hold back in your just hatred and stark criticism of me and just how I have broken your trust, and that you'll never believe another story that I will ever tell ever again. God, here's the thing, but like, I tricked myself. So, I think that just means it was a really good story and it was really believable. Other than that though, let's see what we learned today. What did we learn? Number 1, Charlie Brandt, at 13 years old, murdered his mother and their unborn child, tried to kill his father, and tried to kill his older sister before finally, not. And then later in life, killed his wife and his niece, and then police have no idea why. But they also wonder if he might be connected to as many as 26 other murders throughout the country. Number 2, Daniel LaPlante, just a complete psychopath. And if this story hasn't been the inspiration for a movie, it really needs to be, because, oh God, just so perfect, right? But yeah, I don't think it has been, but it really should be. And then number 3, Brenda Spencer didn't like Mondays, and so she decided to shoot up a school in San Diego. Next week on Our Weird World, it's the 5th edition of our Weird Fun Bag. 3 stories, as always, and we are looking at the Tree of Tinnery, the story of Roof Man, and the Cocaine Bear. Just fun stories, as always. So thank you for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends. Make them listen to this episode, see if they fall for it. Maybe that'll make you feel better. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, that's it. Keep it weird. We're talking away. I don't know what I'm to say. I'll say it anyway. Today's another day to find you shying away. I'll be coming for your love, okay? Take on me. Take me on. I'll be gone in a day or two. So needless to say, I'm odds and ends, but I'll be stumbling away, slowly learning that life is okay. Say after me, it's no better to be safe than sorry. Take on me. Take me on. I'll be gone in a